the wounded and injured. We hope for the return of the missing and displaced. Pride and victory for Sudanese people. Before I pass it to Ms. Miriam, yes, I would like to mention that in addition to the Zoom, the talk is being broadcasted on the other platform, Facebook, Clubhouse, دعم الثورة, المصطبة العجيبة, within the Sudanese American platform on the X Twitter, منصة X Twitter, معنا Mr. نزار and Dr. Salma. Then we have صوت الثورة على تيك توك معنا ياسر وأمل ونجلاء. Now I can pass it to Miss Miriam. Go ahead, Miriam.
Thank you, Dr. Mahjoub. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Rita Freed. Rita Freed received her BA from Wesley College and her MA and PhD in Egyptian and Ancient Near Eastern Art and Archaeology from the Institute of Fine Arts, New York University. She was Associate Professor of Art at the University of Memphis and co-founder of the Institute of Egyptian Art and Archaeology before coming to the MFA Boston to head the Department of Ancient Egyptian, Nubian, and Near Eastern Art, a position she now holds as Emerita. She also teaches Egyptian and Nubian art at Wesley College and Ancient Nubia to underserved, at-risk high school students in the Boston area through the Seymour Institute. As a non-resident fellow at the Hutchins Center for African and African American Research, Harvard University, she pursues research in Nubian art and develops methods to make it more widely available. Her next project is co-editing Image of the Black in Nubia with Henry Louis Gates Jr. Dr. Freed has excavated in Egypt at numerous sites from the Delta to Karnak, as well as in Israel and Cyprus. Thank you, and I am now pleased to introduce Dr. Rita Freed.
Well, thank you, Miriam. I have to say first, it's a great honor for me to talk about Nubia to you, whose culture it is. And I feel humbled and honored at the same time. And I only hope I can do your culture justice, and that excuse me, I keep getting pop-ups. I hope I can do it justice, and I hope that it will be the beginning of a discussion. And if you have thoughts on what I'll be saying or other ideas, I absolutely welcome you. I view this completely as a work in progress. So I've been privileged to get to know some members of the local Boston Nubian community over the last number of years, and especially Mohammed Khalifa, who I know is here this afternoon. Mohammed asked me to talk to you about a book I wrote on. Oops, now I have to figure out how to advance this. Let's see.
Press the arrows.
I'm pressing the arrows, but nothing is happening. We're going to figure this out.
Press escape and use it without full screen.
I'm pressing escape. Let's see more. Nope. Well, I have for sure. Let me try. I'm open to suggestion. Because there are lots of slides, or lots of images, I should say. I'm plugging in the monitor, and I don't know if that will make a difference at all.
Dr. Rita, I will stop the sharing, and then you need to share it again.
Okay. All right. now I'm not seeing share on the, I see presenters chat. Oh, share. Okay. How is that? Can you see?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine.
There we go. Done. Okay. Thank you. I'm glad there are people who are more tech savvy than I. Mohammed asked me to talk to you just after my book on ancient Nubian art came out, which is a couple of months ago. And he asked me to tell you how I came to write this book. Well, it's a long story and a short story at the same time, and very simple. For years, I was chair of the Department of Ancient Egyptian, Nubian, and Near Eastern Art at the Museum of Fine Arts, as Miriam told you. And that collection includes 24,000 objects from Sudanese Nubia. And the reason for that is the museum excavated them in the early 20th century. And at that time, under the British mandate, you were given half of what you found. So half of what they discovered is in the Museum of Fine Arts. And as chair of the department, you can't be in charge of these objects and not be enamored of them. So I came to know the objects and really came to love them. My frustration was that I didn't have the opportunity to put them on view for very long. That's another story. In any event, in 2019, we had the opportunity to do an exhibition devoted to Nubia. And I think a number of you may have seen it because I know that some people came from the Washington area. It was called Ancient Nubia Now. And it was in the course of that exhibition, as I was taking people through and just seeing their delight in discovering these objects for the first time, that I really thought I left the museum during the pandemic, and I realized I left the museum in part because I realized that I could make a bigger difference in doing something else. And what I wanted to do was make ancient Nubian art more widely accessible to the general public, because I saw a sense of empowerment, I saw a sense of delight, a sense of acknowledgement of a great culture that was otherwise completely unknown. And I realized that having been in charge of this material for so long, I had the knowledge and I had the ability to do that. So to sum it up, it was the power of the materials, of the ancient Nubian materials, that led me to write this book. By the way, it was published by the Getty. The Getty gave me some coupon codes, which Mohammed will share with you later, where you get a 20% discount on the book for about a month, I think. So with that, oh no, I'm having the same problem here of advancing the slides. My arrow doesn't work.
Are you using the keyboard arrow, or there is also
let's try this. I'm using the arrow on the screen now. This is just a small fraction of the Nubian objects, which I have to say are now on view. It's a small gallery, but we hope it will grow, and it's for sure better than nothing. So we hope for more and bigger, because the larger objects are not the ones on view. There we go. Okay. I don't have to, well, let me just say, we were having a discussion about where is Nubia and what is Nubia earlier before we started. I generally show people this map. I feel a little strange showing it to you as Nubians, but as in terms of what is Nubia, we all know that Nubia is not and never was a country, but a geographical area. And in terms of who is Nubia, of course, I think we all agree that anybody who identifies as Nubian is Nubian. But very briefly, it is the area of the cataracts and includes southern Egypt from just north of Aswan all the way to around Khartoum in Sudan, of course. But we now understand that there are a lot of influences that are coming in through the wadis in the desert and all the way out to the Red Sea and may stretch even farther out than that. So it has quite an amazing breadth and depth in terms of endurance as well, in terms of the time that it endured. I could start anywhere. I could start at 1,000,000 BC, but I won't. I'm going to start much earlier than most people start, in the Neolithic period, around 8,000 BCE, because I think in the Neolithic period, there are some absolutely amazing works that most people are just not familiar with. I'm going to try to, nope, that didn't do it. Did that? I'm going to try to, no, sorry. On my screen, I see all of us and in the middle. Can you see my screen clearly?
Just the axis on the bottom, the dates are not clear. If you can just give the first one and the last one, we can imagine the middle.
What I'm trying to do is I see a column that has us on it. And I'm trying to, I would like to get rid of maybe, how's that? Is that better? Is that any better?
The same almost. It's just if you can read it, that will be good.
The view you see, we don't see it. Whatever you have on your screen is not the same. We see the presentation and we see your picture on the side. We don't see the column on the top.
You don't see, oh, you see just the screen with the
presentation, yes.
Well, according to that's not what I wanted to do. This is not advancing it. I'm not advancing it.
It's advancing, it's changing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we'll start here. I think this is about the best I can do. Are you looking at a beautiful black pot with incised decoration?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, we're on. So I'm going to start in the Neolithic period, a period that really kind of gets ignored, but I think around, this pot is around maybe around 5,000 BCE. I think some of the most sophisticated work produced anywhere in the world at this time was produced in Nubia. And it's not only at one site, but it's basically Sudanese Nubia and all the way around Khartoum to also around Kerma and so forth, various sites. So what I'm going to do is just first take you through the basic period. So we have the beginnings here, a time when you get impermanent housing, you get pottery, you get these solar calendars like here at Nopta Playa, and then very rapidly move on to another culture that you may have heard called the A group, from about 3,800 to 2,900 BCE, located basically between the first and second cataracts, all underwater now thanks to the Aswan High Dam, alas. But there was a considerable amount of excavation, so we have a lot of material, including some material that hints at the southern origins of Egyptian dynastic culture, or at least the shared origins of the ideas of kingship, because this incense burner, which is uniquely a Nubian object, has iconography or symbols on it that we later associate with Egyptian kingship. So I think that's a very interesting area of research right now, and I think we're going to hear a lot soon. We go to the same area as the A group that is between the first and second cataracts. We're moving on in time, and fascinating pottery, just amazing stuff. Then we go to the traditional empires of Nubia that you've all heard of, I'm sure. The Empire of Kerma, Napata, and Merowe in chronological order, and also, interestingly, in order from north to south. And I'll be talking briefly about those. Of course, the Kerma Empire with the famous Defufa, 1,000,000 mud bricks. The Kerma Empire lasted for about 1,000 years and even challenged Egypt. And oops, let me go back. They built, it was a planned city. They built administrative buildings, palaces, both rectangular and circular. And also, there were funerary rituals. There are about 40,000 tombs there, which some of which are as large as football fields. And there were rituals conducted in structures like this chapel. And I show you this, and I show you the marching lion, because you have to imagine on either side of this chapel, there was a giant faience lion. So when you walked into the chapel, you were walking between lions. So definitely a sense of power and control there. And going on to the power of Kerma really challenged the Egyptians and frightened the Egyptians. So the Egyptians invaded when they had some strong warrior kings, and they were there for about 500 years. And their headquarters was Jebel Barkal, which was also, I suspect many of you have been to Jebel Barkal, a big mesa, a big mountain rising in an otherwise flat area. And the Egyptians decided this was the homeland of their god, Amun. But they also took in the Nubian god, which was probably a ram god because of the strength and tenacity of rams. And they merged the ram-headed god into their god Amun. So now Amun, thanks to the Nubians, is often shown with a ram head. So the Egyptians were there for about 500 years, and they why did they want Nubia? Because of gold, because of the exotic woods, because of the exotic animals and animal skins. And they they sent some Nubians of elite families to Egypt for education, and then sent them back to organize tribute to Egypt. And here you see in an Egyptian tomb, the Nubians decked out in their ceremonial garb, presenting tribute to the Egyptians. Well, the Nubians when they saw a weakness in Egypt, they lost no time to not only put together as what we call the Second Empire of Nubia, the Napatan period empire, but also to invade Egypt. And they said it was at the request of the Egyptians. So whether it's true or not was just an excellent propaganda move. And they ruled Egypt for about Egypt and Nubia together for about 75 years, and then were pushed out by the Assyrians, but continued the Napatan Empire just in their Sudanese homeland. And finally, the Third Empire of Nubia, the Meroitic period, about 600 years, the furthest south. This is where we get all the pyramids of Nubia, which are more numerous than, not only in Meroe itself, but all over the Meroitic Empire, which are, as we know, more numerous than those of Egypt. So what I want to do for the bulk of this lecture is talk not about the history, but what I saw and see as just a few of the key characteristics of Nubian art. What makes Nubia traditionally, when Nubia was excavated, many excavators thought of it as a bastardized echo of what Egypt was about. They didn't recognize or give credit to the individuality of the Nubian material and Nubian culture. And what I want to do for the rest of the lecture is to talk to you about that individuality. And I selected 3 categories, and you see them on the screen: creativity, the power of women, and resilience. So I'm going to talk about these characteristics seen through the objects for the rest of the lecture. So we'll start with creativity. Some of the most creative objects in my mind are the earliest. Some of the most creative and some of the most sophisticated are the earliest. Now, so I mentioned this is about, like the other ceramic, is about 5,000 BCE, so about 7,000 years old. You have to just close your eyes and imagine some chieftain holding this vessel aloft in the middle, holding it through its waist, and pouring some liquid libation over in a shrine or over a tomb or whatever, because this is performance art. It's not only the vessel itself, but it's also how it was used. And looking at the vessel itself, you see that the shape with that wonderful flaring rim is also echoed in the decoration. So, for example, the rim forms a triangle. And if you look inside the vessel, you see triangles incised inside. And on the outside of the vessel, also triangles incised outside. The artist has given you exactly where you should hold it by leaving a vacant band, and then it takes your eye down to the bottom, which is also completely decorated. I cannot imagine how long this took to do, or this one, which is in its own, which is equally sophisticated, simple shape, but yet they've mixed here the curvilinear shape of the bowl with the very rectilinear geometric shape of the incised linear decoration. It's absolutely amazing that to do this. And if you think this is easy, try it. These vessels, by the way, are all made by hand. The potter's wheel doesn't exist at this point, and anywhere. And they were either made by pressing into the ground or through the coil method, and then maybe with a fishbone or comb-like implement. But try it sometime to get the decoration this perfect. It's for me, it was impossible, and for my students also. So other examples of creativity, particularly in ceramics, but not exclusively. First, the combination of black and red is just a very strong, powerful statement. And then in the C group, there are hardly 2 pots that are the same in terms of this decoration. And the bowl is the characteristic shape. It's simple, but the decoration is almost always all over, and it's all different. As I said, no 2 are alike. But interestingly enough, as one of my students showed me, there are mathematical formulas that will explain this decoration. So I don't think that they were aware of it, but they were instinctively following these mathematical rules. So moving on to the first empire, the Empire of Kerma. I also love of pottery. How else could you get these eggshell thin, beautiful shapes? And I'm looking at the vessel on the right, flaring rim, the beautiful shiny black and red with that ashy layer in the middle. And these were funerary vessels for the most part, although we do find them in settlements as well. They were put in multiples in tombs and sometimes stacked together. Well, one artist had the idea, why make 7 if you can just make 1? So he made one vessel to look like it was 7. And it's really pretty impractical because it would not stand on its own, but that, so what? That didn't matter to him. I don't know if it was a sense of humor or a bit of laziness, but it doesn't matter. It's just really a clever thing to do. And also in the Kerma Empire, there is a unique and wonderful sense of understanding of animals, and animals of all sorts. What you have on the left is an ostrich chick, and you can see that it's trying to fly. You see those little tiny wings up top, and ostriches only have small wings, and that big bulk of the body that it's trying to lift off the ground. The other is a hyena, most likely, and hyenas sneak up on their prey, and then they chomp down on it with heavy jaws and pointed teeth, or strong teeth, and you can just sense that sneaking up on the part of the hyena. And if you look at its mouth, that strong zigzag line of the mouth, that really tells you that this is a dangerous animal. So these were all completely conveyed in these ivory, possibly hippo ivory animals. And these animals were they were inlays into the footboards of beds. In Kerma, and earlier in Nubia, burial was on beds. And your head rested on a headrest, but your footboard was decorated so that you could see it. And it was decorated with inlays like these, a whole variety. I should show you one more because I love it. A giraffe. Now, this looks like a giraffe next to a palm tree, nibbling on the ground, as giraffes do. But when you take a better look at this, you realize that's not a palm tree at all. Those are wings. So a winged giraffe? I don't think so, but it was so natural, seemingly natural for them to do that. And it's also a beautiful design with all the verticals of the neck and the legs and the wings together. So to my knowledge, no other culture has winged giraffes, but and just continuing a bit on pottery, so you can go from very naturalistic to fantastic to these pots we have here from the final empire of Nubia, the Empire of Merowe, to this is a gazelle on your left running on that pot. And you know how when things go by very quickly, they seem to get stretched out? Well, that's what they've captured here. In an almost manneristic style, if you're looking at it through the lens of Western art. And on the right is a sort of surrealistic Salvador Dali-like image of a man with a dog. And I have to say, throughout, up until the Meroitic period, and even including some of the Meroitic period, the Empire of Kerma particularly did not represent humans, or if they did, it was very seldom. And when they did, they had their own interpretation, and we'll see that. So let's see. Moving on. Up until now, I've shown you pottery or small objects, but I don't want you to think that it was just small objects where the Nubians expressed their creativity. In the Second Empire, the Empire of Napata, when the Nubians were in control of Egypt, particularly under King Taharqa. Taharqa was one of Egypt's greatest builders and Nubia's greatest builders. And it was a great warrior and a great statesman, moved and ruled the empire from Egypt as the Nubians discovered they had to. What we're looking at on the left is the Karnak Temple, the greatest Egyptian temple, the largest, the most powerful, all dedicated to Amun, which was now the Nubian god as well. And what you're looking at is the entrance to Karnak. You're looking at one of 4 entrances. And what Taharqa did was to make Karnak his own temple. You see one soaring column left out of a total of 10 that were there originally. What Taharqa did was to add his own entry or porch to Karnak on each of the 4 sides. So east, west, north, and south entries to Karnak had Taharqa's gateway. And it was filled with his statues, his name, his obelisks, his image. So what that meant is that again, I have a challenge in moving the images. Let's try that. Nope. There. What that meant is that when the image of Amun came out of the temple, and the image of Amun came out on festival days, and the public this was the only opportunity the public had to see the image of the god. The image of the god traveled on a boat. On land, it was on the shoulders of priests. And on the left, you see a reconstruction of Taharka's gateway, so that the first and the last image people had of the god Amun was through Taharka's gateway. So Taharka's stamp was on this throughout. And I'm going to end the creativity part with possibly my favorite object, which is just, I think, the epitome of creativity. And it's also characteristic of the way the Nubians were not blind to what was around them. They knew about what the Egyptian artists were doing. They just took what they needed and left the rest. So, for example, this is what we call an alabastron. It's made of alabaster. And alabaster occurs in Egypt, but not in Nubia. And it's a popular shape of vessel, occurs throughout the Mediterranean. But particularly, it was used for ungans and so forth. So I'm going to guess that this vessel was made in Egypt just as a plain white vessel, shipped to Nubia. The Nubians recognized that it was an interesting stone and added their own stamp to it. So what did they do? They added a metal collar and rim. That is a base of gold with silver cloisons or little cells. Let's see, right here. And in those, and you can see it better here, in those they put it colorful enamel. And the love of color is another aspect that really characterizes Nubian culture throughout. So the enamel unfortunately hasn't survived, although you can see some of the intricate wire work. And then up top from the rim, they soldered very finely braided wire. And from that wire hung these little teardrop-shaped petals of carnelian, amazonite, and a meteoric stone. So a stone from a meteor that they found. So this is absolutely unique. Nothing like it exists. And it's Nubian. And it's actually on view in the Museum of Fine Arts should you come up there. So another aspect that pervades Nubian culture from the beginning, as far as we know, up until the end of the Meroitic period, is the reverence for and power of women. And that manifests itself in a number of different ways. So, for example, we have what looks like a lot of beads made, and the beads are made of ostrich eggshells. Somebody, poor soul, counted them at one point and came up with around 1,000. That's a lot of ostrich eggshell beads, and I'll tell you why. Each one had to be cut, shaped, and drilled. And a modern artist tried to I don't know if he was an artist or a scholar, tried to reproduce this. And it took him per bead 7 to 10 minutes. So if you multiply that out, that is a solid month of 40-hour weeks to make this string of beads. So clearly the person who owned this had power and wealth. And the person who owned this was a woman. It looks like a necklace, but it was found around her head, either as a hairnet or a diadem of some sort. And another way we can tell power is placement, location. So in another cemetery, we found a large grave of a woman surrounded by 10 smaller graves. So clearly she was a head of a clan, or perhaps a magician, or an important figure in her culture. So I have to go back apparently to go forward, but there. So we get from these early times a certain number of always female fertility figurines. So clearly women's role in perpetuating the culture, the clan, was of primary importance. And here they're letting you know this by what is accentuated here. Obviously the hips and buttocks, outlined by what might be body paint or tattoo here, incised lines. The breasts, the slightly swollen belly, which tells you that she might be pregnant. And what is not important is the head, as you can see. The legs aren't that important either, nor are the arms, other than to support the breasts. So there are these fertility figurines, by the way, are found in graves of women. Not men, and there are no male fertility figurines that we know of, especially from this early period. So if these fertility figurines aren't enough to convince you of the power of women, this sort of outright display of voluptuousness and power, at which her body, her hips, her breasts, emphasized by those wings suspended by her arms. And if that's not enough, she's also got rearing cobras, deadly cobras, on her shoulders. And if this woman isn't enough by her size and the space she takes up to convince you, well, then a similar figure, but with the head of a lioness, should do it. And that's what we have here. So this is from Nubia's Second Empire. These are large, 3 or 4 inches tall amulets. Each one a fantastic combination of images. Almost the more, the merrier. So what could be more powerful than a single woman? Well, here, a group of women. They're incised on a pot with their bodies reduced to triangles, tiny waists, extended hips, all geometrically done, and they're dancing across the pot. And you sense their movement even in the way the incised lines on the bodies are in a zigzag. So this whole thing is just a quavering bit of motion. Again, what's not that important is the heads. They are there. There are balls on top of poles, but they also, in their decoration of the rim, they ran right over the heads, which is interesting because it, first of all, tells us the rim decoration was done last, but also hints at what was important here. So this bowl is unique. I don't know where it is. It was found by an Indian expedition during the salvage campaign for the Aswan High Dam. So it's not only on pottery and small objects, but queens as well were depicted so that they took up room, they took up space, they were voluptuous. None of these thin, waspy women that or feather light women from Egypt. These were women with substance. And you can see that here with Queen Amani Malel from the Sudan National Museum. Okay. And moving on to the Meroitic period. The Meroitic period is where we really see the power of women. And we see it in multiple different ways. First of all, women were queens, kandakes and kores, and you know that word, I'm sure. So they were ruling queens in their own right. Sometimes they ruled with their sons, sometimes they ruled on their own. And as you see here with Queen Amanitore, who is the mother of Natakamani, who you'll see in a minute, she is taking up space. She is large. She is a fighter. And as you see on the other side of the pylon of this temple at Naga, the Amun temple at Naga, I'm sorry, the Lion temple at Naga, you see here her son. She, if anything, takes up more space than he does, but she also is in a role that traditionally in Egypt, only men are shown doing. So she is smiting prisoners. She's carrying weapons. She's got her hand upraised with a sword. Another sword is upright. She's got a lion underneath her, just like her son Natakamani. And on the back of that temple is another really interesting and creative image. So not only is she shown doing the same things that a king does, but also she has the same access to the gods that a male would. So in the middle, you see the lion-headed god Apetamak, whose temple this is. To the right, he has 2 arms and a head, the lion-headed god. To the right, 2 arms and a head face Natakamani, the young king. But to the left, 2 arms and a head face Amanatore, the queen mother, who is, was equally powerful. And this is, normally gods don't have 4 arms. This god also had not 2, but 3 heads, the front of which has been broken off. It's difficult to see. The light is never right, so that's why I show you this line drawing. This is possibly a very early example of animation. I don't know, with the heads going back and forth, but it's very clever. And of course, if gold and jewelry is any indication of power, then Queen Amani Shaketo had it all. Because here, Queen Amani Shaketo had 250 gold and silver baubles in her tomb. They were found by a guy named Ferlini in the early 19th century, and they're divided now between Munich and Berlin. But if you look at this beautiful enamel inlay, the beautiful design of this hinged bracelet, and try to imagine that she had 5 pairs of these. So matching pairs, possibly all worn at the same time along her arms. Now, in that treasure that Ferlini found, and he was very vague on the details, he noted that there were 66 gold finger rings. Now, I don't think she could have worn all of those at the same time, but surely that most of them, by the way, had images of women on them. And finally, Amani Shaketo was serenaded to her tomb by 6 pairs of alloy or reed pipes, like simple pan pipes, except they weren't simple. They were made of material, ivory, wood, and metal. And they were made in the classical world, and we know that from the olive wood was found as part of them, and some of the dolphin decoration, which is a typical classical or Greek image. Well, this is the largest musician's kit ever found. She was serenaded to her tomb with these reed pipes, and afterwards they were broken in half so that nobody else could use them. And they were found at the entryway to her tomb. Now our next, so that's just an indication, again, in the short time I have, a short indication of the power of women throughout Nubian culture. But also throughout Nubian culture, the Nubians showed a resilience that is almost unparalleled. So Nubians were known for their abilities in warfare, particularly their abilities to shoot, particularly they were hunters in Nubia, and they were brought up to Egypt. They were invited to Egypt as mercenaries, and not only came, but also at times settled there, like this man, Henu, who's shown on this Egyptian monument, Egyptian-style stela that was found in his tomb in Egypt. Now, Henu, as you can see, is Nubian. He's got he flaunts it. He's got a Nubian fox tail in the front, which is a Nubian dress. His skin is dark, and he happens to be married to an Egyptian wife whose skin is yellow whose proportions are the skinny Egyptian proportions. Interestingly enough, his children, shown here, his daughter is wearing a Nubian-style long skirt. His son is wearing that same foxtail and that has little tufted Nubian hair and a feather. And their skin color is dark. So his identity, the identity that he maintained even in Egypt, was the identity of a Nubian. So that's what mattered to him. Now, during that period of Egyptian occupation that lasted for 500 years, it was, as I mentioned, the Egyptians came, and how they coerced, I don't know, but they sent the sons of elite Nubian families to Egypt for their education, or more properly, indoctrination, with the idea that they were supposed to return to Nubia and send tribute, like I showed you before. Well, some didn't return, like Maher Perry. Maher Perry apparently was too valuable to the Egyptian administration, so he stayed in Egypt, where he became fan bearer of the king, a very high position, and also was buried in Egypt in the Valley of the Kings, which was a site really reserved for kings and their families, except for Maher Perry. Now, this is Maher Perry in his Book of the Dead, Egyptian funerary literature. And you can see there is no doubt in your mind that he is Nubian. He is black-skinned. He wears, not in this image particularly, but in another image from the papyrus, he wears Nubian-style jewelry and Nubian-style hair. And he has, in his tomb, this very fine gazelle skin loincloth. Leather working was something the Nubians perfected. The Egyptians, not really, because it wasn't their medium. So this gazelle skin goat skin loincloth, goat or gazelle skin loincloth, was Maher Perry took to his tomb in Valley of Kings with him. So he too maintained his Nubian identity. It was the most important thing to him in death, even though he was buried in Egypt. So, and today, when we think of the sense of bright colors and animation, we think of Nubia. This is a henna party. When we think, this, by the way, is Sinar, which is not properly Nubia, but you see that same combination of round and rectangular houses. And thanks to my colleague, Stuart Tyson Smith, who pointed out that in this 19th century Muslim cemetery, you have a low mound of rocks or a tumulus, and you have offering bowls, which are very similar. That low mound of rocks is what mark graves in the First Empire of Nubia, and offering bowls mark graves frequently. So this is something that was carried over. And my Nubian friends in Boston tell me that something that you all know better than I do, that the Nubians are the only Islamic culture that carry a body today to the grave on a bed. And the bed is, of course, a uniquely ancient Nubian phenomenon. So, even in their art, that even in the art of today, the Nubian sense of color and the identity with ancient Nubia is clear to me. So this all, to me, shows resilience of a culture in the face of today unbelievable tragedy. But throughout ancient Nubian culture, there was a recognition that in inclusiveness, there was strength. And I think that's one of the things that makes Nubian culture endure as it has. So I'm going to end there and stop sharing and look for your questions and comments.
You might get some comments from Muhammad Khalifa.
Yeah, really, thank you so much. This is wonderful. And as one of the participants here said, it's breathtaking. Really, thank you so much on the way you displayed the whole art. Muhammad Yasin, Muhammad Khalifa.
Well, thank you. The art is breathtaking, and I've only shown you but a small fraction.
We'll keep announcing about the book, which is shown here on your shelves at the back.
Yes.
Art.
I couldn't resist.
Yeah. It's
So
really a beautiful book.
what I wanted was a book that was well illustrated, and there are about 250 illustrations in it. And I wanted a book that was not for academics. I wanted it to be something that was accessible, written in an accessible language, so anybody could pick it up without a deep-seated knowledge of history or anything in particular, but enjoy the story of ancient Nubia.
Thank you. Muhammad Yasin, are you ready to comment?
شكرا دياب. And thank you again, Bedilmarfا, for hosting such enlightenment, and so continue. I don't think I have a lot to say after this broad presentation, which took us through art, and actually told me personally that art is the best registration of history. And I think the Nubian managed to do so, although we're still trying to decipher our numerotic language, but I'm quite sure we will come to that at the end of our goals, because they wrote a lot about history. But the good thing, they made through sculptures and through art, and they did register their history. And I like the presentation because it was really wide, and it emphasized that the Nubian were always went through wealth, power, and creativity, but not just any creativity. It's a perfection of creativity. And this is beautiful, actually, to hear it from Rita. When did we meet, me and Rita? We met, me and Rita, years ago. I can't tell you when, but we met at the Harvard Museum. They were a project, and we met, and we were sharing some discussions, and then I got an invitation for lunch at the Museum of Fine Art in Boston. And I went there, I talked to Rita, and we went downstairs to the museum, and she showed me some of the unfortunately buried Nubian antiquity in the basement. And we spoke about how can we make it, present it to the people. And the idea was approved by the museum, and because we told the museum that we have Nubian around the museum, and luckily we really have Nubian, Sudanese Nubian, living on the surrounding area of the museum. So we brought them in, we showed them through Rita and the museum administration, and they all asked the very one question: why can't you show it? So the museum, through hard work, we did present few of them, by the way. Rita spoke about more than 24,000 pieces in the basement, but we showed about 400, if I'm not mistaken, Rita. And the museum was well visited at that time. The nicest thing of that show is the name of the show, Ancient Nubia Now. See a combination between history and present. And just to emphasize that the Nubian are still existing. The Nubian are still living in the same area where they were born and they live, despite the isolation, despite the forced migration that's happening to them. And they are still producing and living the same Nubian style, maybe with a little bit of modernity, but they are still there. Now, we all heard Rita, and Rita, during the last 3 years as a senior fellow, non-resident fellow actually, at the Hutchinson Center at Harvard, managed to elaborate with others and spread the word about the Nubian. I think she held several events at the Harvard Hutchinson Center, and she's still actually still there, and I'm quite sure she'll still contribute more and tonight. But from all of that, I learned to know, or come to know, that Rita lived style of life, despite her Egyptology background. But she is actually right now working in a very two projects, delicate project. The first one is Nubitology science. We are trying to have a career and teaching Nubian styles. The second project is not just for those who are in college, is for those who are in public school still. And through her, we are trying to Nubian culture into schools, especially schools with minority of, or with more African American, so we can tell them that Africa is a place where you should be proud that you came from. So I don't think I can speak anymore, because I'm sure that a lot of questions are raised, and I'm sure we will still be learning from Rita up to the end of this event. Thank you so much, Bedilmarfa, and thank you, Rita, for this wonderful talk.
Thank you so much, Dr. Muhammad Yassin. I think Nasir Fahmi is the first in order.
Yes, can you hear me, guys?
Yep.
Okay. First, my name is Nubuntu Khalil. I had some technical issues to access the Zoom. That's why I get it through my friend Nadir. So he is also attending with me the wonderful lecture that we had from Dr. Rita. So thank you very much, Dr. Rita, for your rich and inspiring lecture on the Nubian art. On behalf of the Nubian community here in the US, I'm also a humble scholar and a founder of the Nubian Language Society. I'm a linguist, but I'm very interested in the lecture. I truly enjoyed your presentation and appreciated the depth of your knowledge and the richness of your knowledge that you show through the lecture, and the way you highlighted the artistic achievements, and of course the cultural significance of ancient Nubia, which we understand also does not entrap into specific regions within the contemporary Sudan and Egypt, but it's also sort of all over the regions. And this is our message that we proclaim here, that Nubia is beyond the borders that we believe. And we, for sure, most of the Sudanese should be proud of this Nubian ancient identity, and all what's being presented is really fascinating. And for me personally, this is a memorable lecture that I will remember. It's been a while being disconnected from learning such lectures. I have one question for you, Professor. In your opinion, what is the most distinctive artistic feature? Because you highlighted some of the artistic feature within different times or periods of Nubia through the history. So what makes Nubian art more unique when you compare it to the neighboring rival civilization, say Egypt, ancient Kemet or Egypt? And how do you see this uniqueness evolve over time? Maybe this is a broad question, I know, but I just need a brief. I have another personal question for my research. You link Nubia to womanism. And for my understanding, maybe can we also make it more precise to address motherhood or maternalism? Or it's just general womanism? And you know, the difference is unique or is distinctive between the two terms. Thank you very much for the opportunity and for the lecture, and for the organizers and for my brother Mohammed.
Course, for me, it's the fact that everybody could be creative. It was everybody who was making pottery or figurines or sculpture was not bound by rules. In Egypt, they are bound by rules. People say Egyptian art doesn't change in the 3,000 years of Egyptian art, and a late period piece looks like an Old Kingdom piece. But in Nubia, that's because they had rules and the Egyptians stayed within those boundaries. The Nubians never knew a rule they liked. The Nubians, they were free to create. That is why there are not two pots the same, either in the Neolithic image, that beautiful chalice. There are other chalices, but no other chalice is decorated like that. There are in sculpture as well, and particularly in the Meroitic period, there's a category of objects known as babirds, the representations of the soul. Some of them are realistic, some of them you would swear belong in the Museum of Modern Art. And again, no, there are some that are the same, but their imagination was unfettered, and I think makes Nubia, at least in part, so fascinating to me. And of course, the 8,000 years plus that we can trace these through lines in Nubian art make it also very interesting and unique to me. So I hope that answers in part your question.
Thank you very much. Majdi? Majdi.
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks, Rita, for your fancy slides. I really enjoyed the presentation. I have just some comments. First of them is the animals' existence in the art. I don't see this. How do you read that?
You know, that is a very interesting point.
Right.
And I'm trying to think.
If I can finish my points, probably
okay, sure.
Connect them together in one answer. Right. And I know you are just relying on one kind of art that you can follow or see in archaeology. Also, I wanted to ask about musical instruments. Okay, maybe you don't have access to music, but there is instruments as well. And about the missing parts, how do you think technology right now can help in filling the gaps in the missing parts, like using, and even from 2D to 3D, using virtual reality? Because the 3D representation of the art is much, much advanced than the 2D images. You also talked about gold. How about other metals? Like, I know the area is famous for iron long time ago, and probably it's one of the tools that's being used to create this beautiful art. Well, size matters. What does it imply when we see things small and big? Are they trying to send a message, or this is just the ability of the tools? So I wanted to tie that to the story as well. Well, it's all about shape and materials. So you mentioned gold, metals, even the colors right now they use. There is an understanding of how long that color is going to stay. That's material as well. Diamonds. I don't see any mention of diamonds in the record you provided. Food. They are very famous for turkey, which is fish. That's why I asked about fish, by the way. Right. And language is very, very important for expressing the art and for actually for sharing as well. So I think those are some of the points. Like you mentioned something about the funerals and the marriage ceremonies and those kind of things. So you also just mentioned in one of your answers, they were free to create. Were they free to worship? That's all I have in mind right now. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you. I don't know where to start. Were they free to worship? Very good question. And again, I should mention at the beginning, what we had, you had to be wealthy to have a tomb. To have a tomb that had a superstructure, a pyramid or whatever, or tumulus on it. We're looking at the elite. We may be, excuse me, we may be looking at some servants also, but for the most part, this is not, nobody would say this is a cross-section of ancient Nubian culture, the people who left objects in their tombs or their temples. We have a sense, were they free to worship? There was an interesting find at Sanam in the temple there, built by Taharqa, and there was a whole cache of small bronze statues of Osiris, the god of funerary god, and it suggests that well, first of all, in Egypt, only the high priests were allowed into the temple. But these caches that are found in Nubian temples suggest that the general populace was allowed in as well, and also that the area around the temples was open to worshipers. So were they free to worship? On the basis of that very slim evidence, I would have to say yes. Insofar as we know. And, you know, the archaeological record, we know they had instruments. Those alloy I showed you didn't come from out of the blue, but they in particular were imported. We also know that they had signaling methods via something called rock gongs. So stones, specific kinds of stones hammered on specific boulders, would either signal the next town over or produce music by themselves. What we don't have is musical notation. And I'm not sure we have a lot of the many instruments that must have existed based on what we have in representations in temples in particular, like the temple at Sanam, where people are playing stringed instruments as well. In terms of technology, I absolutely agree with you that three-dimensional, being able to do something in 3D is much more powerful than 2D. I think that we have yet to catch up with that. Also, in terms of working with the skeletons, with the anatomical remains, when we can access them, we can get DNA. That's already not a big deal anymore. We can look at teeth and tell what people were eating. Many of the tomb chapels at Merowe include food as well as burial ceremonies. So this is accessible. And you brought up a very interesting point with fish. To my knowledge, fish are not represented, and I cannot tell you why. Surely fish were eaten. We have fishing hooks or harpoons for catching fish. It would have been a natural. The Egyptians had a prohibition against eating fish. That's the Egyptians. Whether the Nubians took what they wanted from the Egyptians, usually molded it into their own way, and then discarded the rest. Whether the Nubians picked up this lack of representation of fish from the Egyptians, I don't know. The Egyptians did represent fish, but theoretically they didn't eat them. But theoretically they didn't eat pigs either. But in Egyptian excavations, you get a lot of bones of pigs. So what they say they didn't do and what they actually didn't do are two separate things. And yes, absolutely, iron. The slag heaps of Merowe are unbelievable. They must have cut down every forest around to be able to make the iron they did. And iron exists in Nubia from about say 900 BCE on, although it wasn't common, but you're right, it was used for weapons. And there are occasional statues in iron too. And the big question is, where did the industry go? Was it passed along to other places in Africa? But an amazing metalworking industry. And certainly, well, gold is a lot easier to work with, of course, than iron. And certainly their expertise in gold working is unparalleled. And also there too, they used Egyptian imagery, but molded it but made it into something else, so that the overall meaning, the overall image might be recognizable to an Egyptian, but the meaning wouldn't be. And they had unique kinds of objects as well, like decorations of their foreheads as well. So
if you can add a little bit about diamonds and glass. I know glass wasn't there, but how about diamonds?
To my knowledge, there are no diamonds found in ancient Nubia or any mines around. And some of you may know more than I do about that. And in terms of glass, they did make glass, particularly in the Meroitic period, but they also imported it. And the very fancy glass was probably imported from Alexandria in Egypt. Glass was not something, I think the Nubians really, they knew how to glaze stones, which is something really special because normally you have to heat a stone to glaze it, to put a color on it. And normally when you heat a stone, it fractures, it just explodes. But they figured out how a way to heat it so that the glaze adhered. And they also invent techniques of enamel work that aren't known elsewhere earlier. So they were, and again, I think it was the color that was so fascinating that they were so hungry for. But no diamonds that I know of.
Interesting. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, can I add something a little? Yeah. Rita, in the sense of the use of the technology, I think you invited at the museum a German missionary, and they came to and presented a beautiful presentation at the museum. Well attended, actually, I remember. And they presented their use of the AIs and the 3Ds, and even they go into 4Ds. And it was wonderful, actually. They brought us beautiful shape from underneath the ground, and they made a reality. So that is there. So it's there, and I'm sure now everybody is using the AI. I think we can develop better just to help us on exhibiting more and give us an idea what we are exhibiting, because there is still a lot of treasure under or beneath the desert and along the river banks to be seen. Yeah.
Thank you, Muhammad. Dr. Suleiman Baldu.
شكرا جزيلا. I would start by thanking Professor فريد for this work, for shining a spotlight on ancient Nubian art. I see a follow-up is needed in the form of again the resilience of Nubian art by reflecting how modern art in Sudan is really influenced by ancient Nubian art. I see this in the works of Al-Salahi, of a lot of artists, they come to mind who are not from necessarily Nubian background. The Shahatu, is very much influenced in all his arts, and Hassan, of course, and so on. And it's not only in in paintings or architecture. Architecture is an important dimension of that. I recall a very discreet small restaurant along the Blue Nile in Khartoum, Andy Mandy, where the owner, who I never knew who it was, but really spent a lot of effort in reproducing ancient Nubian architecture into the physical building of that small restaurant. It's called Andy Mandy. I hope it survived this, disastrous war. The outside verandas were, like temples from that period. There is a small event hall, which was, had a dome built, according to the style of that period. The manager of the restaurant told me there is only one Egyptian family that remained in Nubian Egypt, and we asked them to come and build this dome for us, who are good at building this type of arcs and domes. And this thing wasn't, announced in any tourist book or anything. Of course, the mere Nubians, that's the story. But, there is this attachment to the carryover from 8,000 years ago into today of this art. It's a very vibrant art today, and I wish there would be a follow-up talk at, Bedilmarfa about modern Nubian art and, Nubian art surviving in modern Sudanese art, its architecture, its, all forms of plastic art and so on. Thank you again, and I hope to see this happening. شكرا.
So much. We'll adopt the suggestion. Definitely, there will be some follow-up on that follow-ons. Hassan ibn Auf.
Thank you very much, Rita, Farid. I love you. And I wonder, do you speak a little of Nubian languages?
I wish. I need Mohammed to teach me.
Okay, I have the good news for you. Maybe in about a week from today, I will be hosting a website where people can go and learn Nubian languages. And did you ever visit Sudan?
Yes, I've been there 3 times. Once early on before the road was built, and that was for me. My first time was absolutely magic. Because there were no cars, no trace of other humans, just the monuments and wild animals. And by humans, I mean humans in cars. There were certainly villages and people wearing traditional clothes. It was just a completely memorable occasion, and we slept in tents, and that was fine. And it was this last 2 times, there were roads. Of course, it made it a lot easier to get around. For me, Sudan was just on the cusp of welcoming a big tourist industry, accumulating wealth when this horrible war happened. And I know you all were not surprised. I was surprised, and I just feel very lucky that I was able to go when I did. So, but I would love to know the coordinates of your website. I know. Yes, I know that the Nubian language was for a long time you couldn't teach it in the schools or speak it. I'm glad to see that that's changing.
Yes, this is an effort to salvage the Nubian language, because maybe my generation is the last one who speaks the language. I am almost 8 years. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hassan. And there was a comment on the chat from Umar Zain, but I don't find it again. I wanted there was a comment or question. Chat, Tad, do you remember there was can you access that question on the chat? Any questions?
So there is one from Muhammad Al-Ghazi too.
Yes, can you?
Not Muhammad Al-Ghazi. 1 second.
Yeah.
Muhammad Al-Ghazi, he's just thanking the group for the talk, and he's thanking Dr. Rita. Okay, Nasruddin Al-Ghazi.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
No, I didn't see. Can you read it?
Nasruddin said it's wonderful to ask the readers of your book to read it as a story in non-academic language, and above all, as a human experience, the story of Nubian, how it began, how it endured, and how it ended. I think this is for the people.
Well, thank you. I hope it didn't end. I just, because I was just covering Nubia up until Christianity, where I saw, you could I could have continued on. I did actually try to continue till today. And there are some other pieces by contemporary artists like Ishaq Abdul Ghaffur and El Shafi Dafala, who I think both of them are doing fabulous work. And I'd love to know more about the contemporary artists as well.
Thank you. Can we give a chance to Rama first, and then we come back to you, Mehdi? Rama?
Thanks.
Okay.
Hello, Rita. I am Rama Abdin. I am 15 years old. I want to thank you about this beautiful information, and I am so proud of Nubian culture, and I would love to meet you one day. Thank you.
Inshallah, I hope so.
Thank you very much, Rama.
And never forget your Nubian identity.
Mehdi?
Oh, thanks again for giving me another chance. Actually, I am deeply interested in understanding that history in order to be able to synthesize new art, new food, new languages, new math, new laws. To what degree do you think, Rita, the new tools right now in AI or so can help in doing so? Because I don't see any big activities in this regard. Thanks. Go ahead.
I don't know how to answer that. I think that if you ask AI some very basic questions, it will give you answers, some of which are true. For me, I think that if you feed AI a lot of material, I think AI is a very useful tool for archaeology. I think if you say, feed it all the different pottery shapes you have and all the information you have, it will produce a spreadsheet, like an Excel spreadsheet. If you ask it specific questions, it may interpret them for you, like, where do you find bobbards, or where do you find musical instruments? I think AI is AI only knows what's already out there, and I think it'd be interesting to experiment. And I hope my students will do that next semester. I think we can't, just as a teacher, I have to say, I think we can't ignore AI, but I wouldn't, at this point, I would use it as a tool. The three-dimensional modeling that we've been talking about, I think it can make that easier. But I think it's the human mind that needs to be the underpinning of all this. I think asking AI what it knows about Nubian art would be an interesting thing, and some of it might be true. But I'm certainly not the expert. I've played around with it. I didn't for the book because it needs, as you know, it needs to comb information from the web or wherever before it will produce anything. And excuse me, I wanted these to be my own ideas, not somebody else's. So yeah, I think AI will help, particularly archaeology in the future.
Right, but I'm interested in synthesizing, creating new things from old things.
Yeah.
And there is technology to do so. Right now you can see a lot of songs, a lot of music being created by those.
Right. Yeah, good
Yeah,
point. Thank you very
just
much.
understanding the history.
Yeah. So now we found the comment from Omar.
It's the last one. He put it again. Just
yeah, he put it again. How long did the Kushite kings, ancient Sudanese, live? And he gave around 747 BC. So did you see that?
Yes, 747 to 756 or so is when they ruled Egypt, but the Napatan kings continued. In fact, there is no real break between the Second Empire of Napata and the Third Empire of Merowe. It's just that the royal cemetery moved. That's when people usually make the break. And early Meroitic art is very similar to late Napatan art. So it's really an amazing stretch of continuous culture.
Excellent. Thank you. I have a question right now, since there is a chance. First of all, I think they touched that question and you mentioned about it. It's just amazing how this pottery survived for thousands of years. And was it a choice for them that they chose? They want something to last a long time, or just it happened by chance. This is a material that can last a long time. And what is special material about the colors? Anybody knows what kind of material is used for these colors to last that long? Now we have something, even the photos, after some time they shade, they fade, and you don't see anything about them. The other question about the pottery in terms of that Nubian civilization, there were potteries also in the Nilotics areas south of it's just all over the plain. You will see pots and 1,000 years, 2,000 years old, and even around Sinnar, Jabal Moya, that some. But the question is the patterns. Do you, as a specialist, you tell them pattern from Ethiopian pattern, like in the plateau or in the Nilotics, and some other, like in Mexico, they may have pottery. Everywhere they have that around that age.
Interesting. Well, a lot of the when you talk about the pottery, we look at many different things. We look at the decoration, we look at the shape, we look at the material itself. But as far as the designs are concerned, if you isolate the designs like triangles or circles, those are basic shapes, of course, and many cultures will have them. But it's the combination of the way the pot is made, the decoration, the kind of decoration, the shape that would determine it. And I honestly, I believe that through the wadis that people, they travel now and they travel then. And I think there are a lot of, I don't know Ethiopian or Eritrean pottery, or even Red Sea pottery well enough myself to draw any conclusions. I think Libya would also be a possibility. I haven't worked extensively with that, and I would hesitate. I wouldn't be surprised. I think motifs, you see something, you like it, you copy it. But for me, this Nubian ceramics, with the exception of the Napatan period, when we're closest to Egypt, this was a major mode of expression. And of course, the Nubians were not only lived in this in communities, but also were pastoralists, lived in the desert. And some of the desert communities have their own take on pottery, slightly different. But I think the Nubians saw ceramics as a real vehicle for creativity. With the Meroitic pots as well, the decoration on the Meroitic pots is extraordinary. And I don't think anybody's pulled them all together. There have been studies on individual aspects, but the decorations some of them are absolutely wild. Some of them are similar. Some of them are heavily influenced by the classical world or the Egyptian world, but they're amazing. Yeah, I think that pottery, Nile mud was readily available. It formed easy containers and storage, for drinking or storage. And I think it was much easier to access than stone, for example, certainly metal. So I think that whether they realized that ceramics would last so long, I don't know. But because they were found in tombs, and the tombs, if their tombs were robbed, they weren't interested in the ceramics. That's why we know so much. And ceramics are, of course, found in habitation sites. Very often, the fanciest ceramics are not found in habitation sites, but found in tombs or temples. So they clearly they had those pots I showed you took a long time to make and were very carefully thought out. They had, just like we do, their routine, plates for every day, flower pots or, cups and that sort of thing. And those probably were not decorated. A whole lot of this is really very fancy ware that I showed you. But the other material also conveys a different kind of information.
Beautiful. Thank you. Is that an old hand, maybe, or a new hand?
Yeah, let me just talk a little about
Yes.
the book, if possible. Yeah. Yes, this is a book, actually. And I'm glad that I was one of the maybe first to get it with beautiful, signature of Rita, if you can see it. I don't know how to do this in the computer. But as you can see, it's a square book. It's not this regular triangle book. And the book was published by Getty. Getty is one of the best, platform of pictures around the world, and they are the best to produce pictures to all agencies and cultural platforms, and they are really amazing, actually. And I'm glad that they did publish. I mean, that Rita chose to use them to publish this beautiful.
We have put the link for
Yes.
Getty. Also, I saw Omar Mohammed Zain has put the Amazon link where you can buy the book. Getty can give you the discount.
Yeah.
It is a 20% discount actually from Getty. And thank you again, Rita. We got that yesterday, but it's really beautiful actually to do so. Although it worth more than its price, to tell you the truth.
To have it on your living
Yes,
room.
it is actually a catalog history book, and I'm glad that Rita set it up in a very magnificent way. Actually, read just one thing, note by Henry Louis Gates, who forwarded this book, the head of the Hutchinson Center. He said a stunning, original, seminal achievement, Rita. Masterwork that will serve to redefine the field. In fact, few words which can describe this powerful book. I encourage every, not just on Nubian, every Sudanese and every Nubian around the world to obtain a copy of this book, because it's a beautiful reference. It is actually breathtaking. When you see the picture and you see the history and you see the beautiful wording and the description of each picture. Rita is well known of indexing this antiquity at the museum. And I really love her comments on each piece. She always gives us the exact period where we excavate, where we found this thing. My last thing, actually, Rita, I wouldn't be in such an event without thanking the person who brought us all this stuff. George Reisner, professor and archaeologist George Reisner, who went to Sudan. The person was in love with the Egyptian art. And he went deep to the south and he started finding some differences, some objects. They are not Egyptian. And it raised his curiosity and asked, and they told him, go south. So he went and he entered Sudan. He was not intended to do so. And he started excavating there and he found, this treasure. Came back to Harvard. And I think they subsidized him to go back again and start exhibiting. And he stayed there, for a long time. When he started collecting stuff, I think the First World War interrupted. And and continue the story, please, Rita. You are much.
Oh no! Well, he saw you. First of all, he was employed by the museum. He excavated a number of different sites, all the royal cemeteries of Merowe, not the city itself, but the cemeteries. He excavated at Jebel Barkal at the temple. He excavated Kerma, many of the tombs. And he first went to Nubia for the first archaeological survey of Nubia in 1907, when the first Aswan Dam was going to be enlarged. And he recognized, it was recognized at that point that many of the monuments that would be flooded out, and that a lot of the area was unexplored. So he was part of I think it was an Egyptian government committee to survey the area that would be flooded out by the first Aswan Dam. And then, of course, and that's how he came, that was his first familiarity with Nubia. And then he went back when he saw how rich it was. And to be honest, he worked for a museum and he knew he had to produce objects. So I think it was I will be frank with you and tell you that he was one of many who saw the Nubian material as primarily Egyptian. But the fact is, he excavated it and preserved it and kept excellent records. So we still have the original records in the museum, and much of the material is completely published in a fabulous series of books called The Royal Cemeteries of Kush and the Second Cataract Forts. These are the forts between the First and Second Cataracts, and they're available online for free downloads. So if you want to see the excavations, they were published by the museum under the authorship of Dow's Dunham, primarily, one of his assistants. And of course, Reisner and the museum were not involved in the Aswan High Dam surveys, but many of the institutions who were have made the material available either in publication, or I should mention the Institute for the Study of the Ancient World at Chicago. Bruce Williams publications are available for free download. So there's a lot you can access without, by just playing around on the computer.
Thank you. Maybe you have a comment?
Oh, yes, just one thing I forgot to mention. Most people in written language believe that the future is going to be shaped like icon-like writing, or even GIFs. To what degree do you think, Rita, that the Nubian history can influence this in this direction? Thanks for giving me 3 chances there. Thank you.
Well, I think technology brings us all closer, for sure. And I think, as long as you continue to have groups like this and express your opinions and make them known beyond the groups, Nubia will be represented. I think it's up to, particularly for the ancient material, I think the more museums that get the material out. I know the Museum of Fine Arts has plans to expand their very small Nubian gallery, but I will say the material is available at mfa.org under collections, so they have a very good website. And Chicago as well, and the University of Pennsylvania also have, at least in the US, have premier Nubian collections. And of course, the British Museum, Berlin, Munich, and I'm sure I've forgotten something. There are museums in England also that have some Nubian material through the Egypt Exploration Society. There you find Meroitic pots in places. Liverpool actually has a good collection of Nubian material.
Thanks.
Any more questions? Taj, is there any other questions from the other
I don't see.
Yeah, okay. Really nice, so nice. Thank you so much, Rita. We took you for a long time, actually, but we like to have some concluding remarks and way forward also.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all, guys, for the wonderful presentation and discussion.
Thanks, Majdi. Thank you, Dr. Rita, فريد, for the great talk. I would like to thank Dr. Muhammad Khalifa. He is the one who's suggesting and inviting Dr. Rita to present. I want to give a finger credit to Mr. Khalid Mahjoub because he brought, this is a breathtaking.
Yes.
So it's really breathtaking. Thank you, Khalid also. Thank you all for joining us. Discussion like today are important in reminding us of where we have. Then just definitely we will adopt Dr. Suleiman Baldu suggestion. Thank you all for joining us today.
Rita, any last comment? Any?
Well, as I said at the beginning, I'm honored to be talking to this group, to a group of Nubians, and I hope to continue learning from you because you have unique insights into the culture of today that probably carries back into the past. And as I continue to learn about it, I'm continually fascinated by it. So it is truly my honor to be accepted by you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We'll be
I
in
want to
touch.
see Khalid. One second, if you don't mind. I want to see Khalid Mahjoub. What you going to say? تفضل يا Khalid.
Khalid, unmute, please. Can you unmute, Khalid?
Yeah, I am trying to unmute. Thank you, guys. Salam, everybody. Okay, real quick. I know you guys closed the thing, and I won't take too long. It seems like it's breathtaking, to be honest. That I get the honor of the way. So all the rights of, but it took too long already. I don't want to take too much from the time of you guys. But it seems like I missed the first couple of minutes. If let me start by saying I'm talking to you, Dr. Rita, as Nubian American, quote unquote. So if who happen to live in New Jersey, so for whatever reason, if I'm in Boston at any given time, can I see those breathtaking fine arts you presented? I mean, is there any timing? Is there any website that's to reserve a ticket or anything?
What you can, well, first of all, I left the museum basically to write the book. And I have no, other than an emeritus status, I have no control over the material anymore, unfortunately. I believe, first of all, there is the small Nubia gallery with some shawabtis and some other things. And that's open to everybody. You would have to write I would write to the director and explain that you're a Nubian American and want to see the material. Particularly, there are colossal statues of kings that I didn't show. There is a 16-ton sarcophagus of a spelta that I didn't show. I would, if I were you, I would write to the director of the museum and ask him to see them. Tell him how proud you are of this material and how you would welcome the chance to view it. And that said, that you understand there are some small things on view. I will tell you, and this is not a pretty story, I will tell you that when I asked to take my class to see those pieces, I was denied permission.
Oh.
So yes. So yeah,
This
I think it's a matter of time.
No, I guess you answered my question. So if I'm on a visit for a couple of hours, so it's like impossible to see it.
Well, but I think that's why I'm suggesting you write to the director.
Yeah, I got that, but I thought it's a public thing. Okay, one more thing.
I'm sorry. I wish I could make it that.
I know, but one day I guess it will happen because of the new technologies now. I can fly and that will
for sure. And by the way, not all the objects I showed were in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Some of them were in Chicago, some of them Khartoum, and we hope that museum can be recovered.
And I guess most of them are still in our land sitting there. There's a ton of stuff to be discovered over there. One other quick comment, as we've seen, at least in the past few decades, 50, 60 years or so, there's so many great scholars from the West in our area. Adams and the great Herman Bell and Charles Bonnet, who happened, we just had a podcast with him a week or two ago.
Oh, nice.
He was 93. He came, I had the honor of being there talking to him.
Oh.
So this great scholars that's been in our area all these years, do you see this trend is continuing? I know there's so many local scholars, and a lot of Sudanese are doing this now, and having PhDs and do a lot of research and doing that. But I'm talking about specifically the Western scholars that they come with like a different eye, if I may say. Do you see this trend continuing? Do you see among your, let's say, your students, someone who's interested in continuing? I would imagine probably the answer is yes, but do you see it really vivid and clear that someone is interesting to be there at some point?
Well, first of all, I should tell you that I teach undergraduate students. I don't teach graduate students. The college I teach at doesn't have a graduate program. I don't, and I just teach the one course, so it's hard to know. Some of them are truly interested, but it's from my own students. But I do believe there are people teaching Nubia now more than there used to be, and as long as they're teaching it, they will have students. And I would like to think the interest in the West will continue. And also, as you mentioned, the Sudanese, there are some fabulous, and always have been, great Sudanese scholars excavating the material and working with the West or Western scholars, or having their own excavations. So I think what we need now is peace, and then the work will continue. From my own experience, it's much easier to work in Sudan than it is in Egypt. The Sudanese are much more welcoming. They make the paperwork straightforward. You find out they invite people to excavate. You find out in a reasonable time if your permission is granted. And so I think and there is so much to discover. It's so exciting to work in Sudan and find things that have no parallels. So if I were a student now looking for a dissertation topic, in a second, I would look for a Nubian topic, because I think it is so ripe for discovery. So this is by way of saying, I hope there are people, and I do know that my colleagues have graduate students.
Thank you, Dr. Rita. And thank you all, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Masalama.
Salama.
The recording has stopped.